Greetings, one and all. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks you once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're returning, welcome back. Please also hit the bell icon to make sure you don't miss anything. To start today's session, I'd like to encourage you to go to Tesla Fan Insight on Facebook. I've posted a couple of images there that are wow, we're not getting help here. It's saying rotate device, and I'm not sure that I'm recording, so I will keep going. So this is screen is sideways. Thank you. All right, I was hoping to go landscape. I was hoping to go landscape because it's a more natural position to record in, but I think I'll have to give that up, even though the camera said I could do it. So thank you, Io. So again, I'd like to have you guys go over to Tesla Fan Insight on Facebook. I've posted a couple of images today, and the first, let's say, 4 or 5 minutes of our session will be focused on the information that's covered in that. So those are a couple of slides from J.B. Stroibel's class at Stanford. And sort of for the lesson plan today, what we're kind of focused on is the decision made by Tesla to go with lithium ion in terms of its battery choice made sense. But what you'll see is that from those graphs and charts, you'll kind of see the logic behind it in terms of energy density and other advantages that lithium ion has over other types of batteries. Now, I'm really fascinated because one of the shows I'm preparing right now focuses on sort of the look at those nickel batteries versus lithium ion that Tesla has chosen, and the fact that BYD has a truck that's 53-foot trailer behind it, and they actually use a nickel battery and are getting close to 100 miles in range with that truck. And those trucks are being purchased right now in Canada by a grocery store called Loblaws. And I was kind of surprised to see them using those kind of batteries. But there's a limitation because they're heavy, and the charge, properties don't work as well as lithium ion does. So, at any rate, bottom line is that please take a look at the charts. Would love to get or look at the graphs that are presented. In essence, they illustrate the reason why Tesla has chosen lithium ion over other choices in terms of energy density, etc. And as part of the process of climbing the learning curve of Tesla, I think it's a useful thing to be exposed to. The next thing I wanted to focus on, and the title I put on this show, is called Supply Chain Challenges for Mercedes-Benz based on the moves that Tesla is making. So basically, Daimler-Benz has announced that they're having serious supply chain issues because as they move to electric or hybrids across their entire line, there are a number of suppliers that won't be able to meet their current needs based on what the new demands are that are coming from the move over to electric. So I was kind of blown away because right now one of the biggest arguments against Tesla is the fact that they're burning through a lot of cash. The reason is that when you look at, for example, GM is 25% vertically integrated. When you look at Tesla, Tesla's 80% or 85% vertically integrated. So what this means then is that they have a lot of cash tied up in inventory and other things, and that cash is not available to pay shareholders or show huge profit margins, etc. So I'm fascinated because with Daimler being forced to change over their supply chain to meet the needs of electric, they may in fact have to bring some suppliers in-house as owned entities to get the throughput that they need. And in essence, they're being forced to flex into the structure of business that Tesla is engaged in. So I think this is a kind of a shock because, at the end of the day, the argument has been by Daimler and others that Tesla can't compete with a global footprint. But now Daimler-Benz is saying that a number of their suppliers might go out of business because the transition to electric might be too brutal. So kudos to Tesla. I think this is awesome that it shows the structure that they've developed needs to be adopted by others who want to be effective in their competition going forward. And it's not just about producing a battery or a car, it's about having a supply chain to successfully support the manufacturing of those vehicles. The next thing I wanted to jump into is a few points that I wanted to make on the Model 3. And basically, one of the things that I picked up on when I sat in the car is that Tesla is in a situation where most of their designers are men. And I noticed there are a few pointers in the car that suggest that very few, if any, female designers are involved with the car. In particular, you'll notice that when you get in the car, if you're in the passenger seat, every vehicle has a vanity mirror with or without a light there, and the Model 3 does not. I thought that was kind of interesting because it's one of those little features that female designers would have seen, noticed, and gotten put in, but for male designers it's a little consequence. Part of the reason I bring it up is that a lot of the inputs that we make to what's going on and you argue for are things that Tesla will change and therefore improve the car before it arrives. The other note I want to make on things that may need to be changed is that a Model 3 got into a 60-mile-an-hour accident where they ran into the back of a vehicle. The driver came out unhurt, but one of the problems they found was that because the screen in the vehicle exploded, the screen could not be used to open the glove box so they could get a hold of insurance and other sort of entities. So what this suggests is Tesla's model of saying, I want no buttons at all in the car is a really good idea for a bunch of reasons in terms of changes, but something like a glove box lock that's a standard lock that every vehicle has used for the last 50 years is probably a good idea, because in an accident setting, it might be a good deal to have access to whatever it is in the glove box at that point. For example, information, licensing, all the other things you might need, and a broken screen won't allow that. They were able to get into it, but I think that, for example, if you have a Model 3 or you have it on order, you may want to think about storing, vital documents in a manner that they aren't obvious to the general public, but you still have access to them if there is in fact an emergency that results in the screen being incapacitated. This also brings up an argument that I've made against the new screen relative to the Model 3, and that is that to not have a secondary way to access the performance of the screen is bad news. I really think that the internal network to the car should have the ability to offer one ability to simply use an iPad or your phone to control internal features to the car if you're in fact the owner. Because if emergencies do occur and the screen is incapacitated, there's no way that you can deal with that. I'm going to continue on a couple of other items that I'd like to focus on today, but I'd like to encourage you to throw questions so that we have a 20-minute session. We're about halfway through right now. I'm going to begin regular discussions of Model 3s, etc. But I'm definitely interested in what you guys have to say and questions you may have had based on shows we presented. Our last show was a truck-focused one on the Nikola, and I think that, I really appreciate all of you guys that did likes or comments, and I also wanted to note that, I've seen some comments fired back in terms of questions that were going on, and one of the comments that I saw come back was regarding the mega charger and the fact that Tesla will start offering mega chargers in, truck stops everywhere, just like you have for superstar chargers. The next thing that I really wanted to cover about that is that the mega charger is an interesting situation. Tesla has a problem. As you saw, they plan to produce as much as 100,000 vehicles by, let's say, 2022 or 23 was the goal that Elon Musk talked about. Obviously, I think he can pull it off. He's left himself enough time, unlike other situations where he has not. You know, it's my belief that selling one-off trucks is 5 years away, only because there are so many large fleets that, you know, really need the truck, that individual truck owners are going to have a hard time getting in line behind they're going to have a very hard time getting ahead in line behind sort of large grocery store entities. In particular, I'm hyper-focused on grocery stores and even beverage distributors, because in the case of the grocery stores, they're operating with 2% margins. So when you have the ability to change up your trucking and turn it into almost a profit center because it costs so much less to run an electric truck, combined with their scale purchase of electricity that they already do, particularly for the refrigeration in the stores, I think that, you know, the first few grocery stores will get it rolling, they'll show efficacy, and then all the other grocery stores will get in line for large orders. So I just think one-off purchases are not going to happen, and they're going to be delayed for quite a while. Thanks for the question regarding how many trucks they're going to produce in 2019. My gut says that they're going to play the game of late 2019, let's say, you know, July, August of next year when they start producing, and it'll be a low number like the Model 3. And then by the end of 2019, we'll start seeing perhaps 1,000 trucks a month is what I'm expecting. So, you know, it's interesting because the whole truck discussion, I'm reading your comments as I'm speaking so that I could be ready for the next question. The whole truck situation is fascinating to me because it's such an important part of what Tesla is doing, but they have to be secretive because the buyers don't want to tell their competitors how many trucks they're buying. And if you're not a buyer, Tesla doesn't want to give you any information. So it's kind of an interesting situation where we all want to know what the deal is, but other than seeing the trucks moving, etc., I think we'll be hard-pressed to get quality information. I just saw a question come up across, do I think Tesla gets to 10,000 units a month as planned? I am fascinated because I think that they're able to produce the number of batteries they need to get that part of things done. And it's my sense that someplace else in the supply chain is where they're having a problem. In particular, I think where the problem is at is that if they had just built the stupid factory right next to the Gigafactory, you'd eliminate transportation and other issues sneaking in there. But I believe that it may be a couple of years before they get to 10,000 units. And the main reason is that Elon Musk and company has chosen one of the worst places in the world to locate their factory relative to traffic. So as a result, I would not be shocked if you shave 1,000 to 2,000 vehicles a month off just on the fact that how they're situated and located just puts them in a bad position to produce at scale, because they just have to have all their vehicles sitting on trucks. The trucks have to move in and out. They're in a high density traffic area that can really slow down, you know, in and out of a factory for raw materials, along with, you know, everything coming together efficiently. So, you know, thanks Sid Ray for the comment. I appreciate it. So my sense of when we get to 10,000 units a month is probably the end of this year, maybe the beginning of next year. I think he's going to push hard to get there faster, but you know, I just think that it's in the best interest of everybody involved for them to slowly ramp, because the fewer defects you have, you know, the better you are. And that's the other thing that I've talked with you about it before, but I really think it's something to consider, is the fact that we're in beta test mode right now in this vehicle. And if you read everything that's coming out, there are a lot of glowing reports on how great the car is. But as you'll notice, after this accident, Elon Musk has indicated that he's going to go ahead and make changes to the car. And so I'm sort of concerned, because if he's going to make changes to the car and they're continuing to have changes in terms of new information that they get, I think it puts us in an interesting zone where the car needs improvement to be fully ready for all the big number customers. You want to get a stable manufacturing line, everything to be perfect before you go for those heavy numbers. And it's bad for the customer for it to be a slow ramp, but it can be good if you don't get a defective, buggy car that has to go back and forth into being dealt with on a regular basis. The final thing I wanted to sort of run through today is I'm having fun. As you saw with my last show, I was focused on what's going on with the semis at this point, and the answer is that they're kind of doing low mountain trials to make sure that the trucks are ready to go prior to start doing trips between the Gigafactory and the main factory of carrying parts, etc. in. And the way they're doing that is to go up in the mountains above the factory, which somewhere in the 1,000, 1,200 feet range is the apex of those mountains. But the stress it puts on a vehicle to have to climb and deal with those hills is basically peak stress that you can use to get, you know, good data on range, as well as do the batteries overheat, etc., etc. So I think it's kind of fascinating. So just a reminder again, please bounce over to Tesla Fan Insight on Facebook. We just posted a couple of images that reflect how and why lithium ion was dealt. The next thing I'd like to remind you is that based on Tesla leasing 1 million square feet in a place called Livermore, California, that is actually where I believe both initially the Roadster as well as the Semi will be produced. That was leased, I guess, mid-summer of this past year, and it's being built out, and I think it's a great location. Having it away from the main factory means that if there's an earthquake or something, you have an ability to keep running. And it's not midpoint, it's only 50 miles away from the Fremont plant, but it is closer to the Gigafactory, and it's an easier drive from the Gigafactory to the new location in Livermore that's being opened up to deal with production. We're at about 18 minutes right now. We're trying to stick in that 20-25 minute zone, so I'm gonna probably take questions you guys have posed offline if I haven't already answered them. I wanted to finally note that I like to introduce you guys to crazy stuff that you wouldn't see anywhere else. So I ran into a gentleman who's somewhat related to El Salvador, and today for lunch I'm having a pupusa. So if you don't know what a pupusa is, you might want to look it up. Evidently it's one of the main dishes that people love from El Salvador. In the case of this, from what I can figure out, it's a layer on top and bottom of flour tortilla, and in the middle you have cheese. In this case I chose to do pork, but you can do chicken or whatever that goes with it. I got it, Pollo Tampico is where I got it, and we're in a place called Lanham, Maryland, and so you guys can look me up, you know, online to see where I'm having my pupusa. I have to admit that cheese with a little bit of pork and mostly cheese, it's like a quesadilla, but maybe an El Salvador version. I'm giving it a okay. It's not bad. It's not on my favorite list because a little bit on the healthy side, but fairly tasty. I'll stick with my burritos and regular tacos so I can sort of move it as I please. I want to, you know, as I'm closing out here, I want to thank all of you for taking time out to view my site. Any support provided will really help us to, I think, do a better job. No, I'm not trying to gain weight, but thank you for the suggestion. And that's one of the reasons you stop eating pupusas and just stick with a nice tortilla to go with a burrito, and avoid things that make you fat. So thank you for that inquiry. Any rate, please, we could really use your help on Patreon in order to improve our execution. I've been really impressed with my viewers because a lot of you have posed questions or given inputs that have sort of led the channel in different directions as we've worked to answer those questions. So, your contribution of questions, etc., really makes sense. Also want to remind you that as the Model 3 is coming out, mentioning things like there's no vanity mirror on the passenger side is bad news, means that Elon Musk and company actually writes that stuff down and will change the cars. So your input, even if you don't have your vehicle yet, is an important part of improving the vehicle. So I highly recommend that you do so. So to finish out, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If you haven't liked or subscribed already, please do so. I'd like to bid you farewell. In Jamaican, wak good is what we say, but au revoir, French, lehitrot, Hebrew, choda hafez, Arabic, tschüss, macht's gut, German, das Vidanya, obviously Russian. Again, thanks for taking time out, and I look forward to our next conversation, and really look forward to your questions that we can field both at the bottom here as well as going forward. Have a great day. Bye.